emotional and deep. If you've ever heard a story that made your heart feel heavy, stay with me till the end. And before I begin, tell me this in the comments. Have you ever realized someone's value only after they were gone? I really want to know, because this story changed everything I thought I knew about love. When I close my eyes, I can still see her standing by the old kitchen window. Morning light touched her face, and she was humming the same tune she'd sung since I was a kid. Back then, I barely noticed it. It was just another morning, another sound in the house. But now, that hum echoes in my head like a ghost that refuses to fade. She was my mother. And if you asked me then, I would have told you she worried too much, talked too much, cared too much. I was in my late 20s, proud of the small life I'd built, certain I knew better than her gentle advice. I used to roll my eyes when she reminded me to eat, or when she called just to ask if I'd slept well. I thought love was about grand gestures, flowers, gifts, promises. I didn't know that love could be as simple as someone remembering how you take your tea. Those early years feel blurry now. I was chasing work, chasing dreams, chasing anything that made me feel successful. Mom would sit quietly at the dining table whenever I came home. She'd ask about my job, about the people I met, about whether I was happy, and I'd answer with half-hearted words, always scrolling through my phone, barely looking up. She'd laugh softly sometimes, like she was used to being background noise. I never noticed how tired her eyes looked, or how she took longer to stand each time. To me, she was just there, and I assumed she always would be. When I finally got married, she was happier than anyone. I still remember her tears that day, not of sadness, but of pride. She told my wife, "Take care of him. He forgets to take care of himself." And I laughed, embarrassed, brushing it off like I always did. Mom moved to a smaller room after the wedding. She said she didn't want to get in the way of our new life. At first, I visited her every evening after work, but days became weeks and weeks became months. Soon my visits turned into short phone calls, if I remembered to make them. My wife never disliked her. Not really, but there was always a quiet distance. Maybe two women loving the same person in different ways created that invisible wall. Sometimes I'd catch Mom standing at the doorway when we argued about small things, bills, time, chores. She never said a word, just smiled faintly and walked away. I mistook her silence for indifference. It was actually the deepest kind of love, the kind that steps back so others can have peace. One evening, I came home late. It was raining outside, soft, steady rain tapping against the windows. Mom was sitting on the couch, a shawl around her shoulders. She looked up and smiled, but there was something fragile about it. She said, "You didn't eat yet, did you?" I shook my head and went straight to my room. She followed quietly, placing a plate on my desk, rice, lentils, and pickles, the same way I liked as a kid. I didn't even thank her. I just muttered something about being tired. And when she left, I could hear her cough echo down the hallway. I didn't go after her. A few weeks later, I noticed she wasn't around much. The kitchen felt colder, the humming was gone. When I asked my wife, she said, "She's been resting a lot lately. You should check on her." I promised I would, but I didn't. Work was hectic, deadlines piling up, life moving fast. I told myself there would always be time. There's always time, until there isn't. Then came that morning. The house was unusually quiet. My wife whispered something I couldn't understand. When I walked into Mom's room, she was lying there, her hands folded neatly, eyes closed. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the world. A nurse stood beside the bed, murmuring something gentle. She went peacefully. Those words shattered me. Peacefully, as if that made it easier to accept. I wanted to scream, to undo every careless moment, to tell her one more time that I was sorry. But all I could do was stand there, numb, staring at the woman I had taken for granted my entire life. The days after the funeral were a blur. People came, hugged, cried, and left. I stayed in her room, surrounded by her scent, soap, tea, and lavender. On the bedside table, there was a small notebook. Inside it were little notes written in her neat handwriting, reminders like, "Don't skip breakfast. Call him tomorrow. He sounded tired." Each note felt like a whisper from her soul, proof that she had loved me quietly until her very last breath. I found a letter tucked inside the last page. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but I knew it was for me. She had written, "If love feels ordinary, it's only because it's been around too long. But one day you'll see how rare it truly was." I broke down completely. That night, I sat by her bed until sunrise, replaying every moment I'd missed, every thank you I never said. Life after her felt different. The house was the same, but emptier somehow. Every sound reminded me of her absence. The creak of the floor, the kettle's whistle, the ticking clock. I started to notice things I had ignored before. The old framed photos she'd kept polished, the worn chair she loved by the window, the way she folded towels perfectly. She had filled the house with love so quietly that I only realized it once the silence replaced her. Sometimes I catch myself talking to her picture. I tell her about my day, about how I'm trying to be better, to notice people before they fade away. Maybe she hears me, maybe she doesn't. But I've learned that saying it out loud helps. It's my way of keeping her close. If you've ever taken someone for granted, a mother, a friend, a partner, call them today. Tell them you see them. Tell them you're grateful. Because one day, when you finally understand what they meant to you, you might only have their memory left to talk to. When I think back to those years, it almost feels like watching someone else's life, like I'm sitting in a quiet room watching a film play out in front of me. I see a younger version of myself, busy, distracted, and so sure that love would always wait for me, no matter how long I took to appreciate it. I remember waking up every morning to the sound of her voice calling my name from the kitchen, telling me breakfast was ready. I'd answer half-heartedly, scrolling through my phone or hurrying to get ready for work. I never stopped to really hear her voice. The warmth in it, the love hidden behind those ordinary words. Back then, life felt like a race I couldn't afford to slow down for. I told myself I was working hard for us, for our future. I thought that was enough, that she'd understand the long hours, the late nights, the way I'd sometimes come home too tired to talk. But love doesn't just need big things, it needs small moments too. The quiet ones where you look at someone and remind them they matter. I missed too many of those moments. She never complained, not once. She'd smile, put my dinner on the table, and ask how my day went. I'd mumble a few words, tell her I was tired, and promise, maybe this weekend we'll go out somewhere. That weekend rarely came. She'd just nod and say, "It's okay, I know you're busy." But deep down, I think she wished I'd put down my phone, look up, and ask about her day for once. There's this one memory that still plays in my mind like a quiet song. It was a rainy evening, the kind that made the whole world smell like wet earth and nostalgia. She was sitting near the window, watching the rain fall, her fingers tracing invisible shapes on the glass. I came in, dropped my bag, and said, "You always stare at the rain like it's talking to you." She smiled softly and said, "Maybe it is. It reminds me of home, of things that don't come back once they're gone." I laughed and didn't think much of it at the time. But now, years later, those words echo like a quiet whisper I should have listened to. She was trying to tell me something, not directly, but through those little moments, through the silences between her words. As time went on,
life got even busier. Work deadlines, new responsibilities, social gatherings. I let everything else come before her. I started thinking love was something that could survive on its own, without care or attention. And yet every night, she'd stay awake until I came home just to ask, "Did you eat?" I used to find that question annoying. I'd say, "Please don't wait up. I can take care of myself." I didn't realize that it wasn't about food. It was about her love, the only way she knew how to take care of me when words weren't enough. Sometimes she'd cook my favorite meal even when she was exhausted, and I'd eat it in silence, scrolling through emails, not even looking up to say thank you. I thought she'd always be there. I thought love was something permanent. But one evening, something small changed. She didn't wait up that night. When I came home, the house was quiet. The dinner table was empty. I remember standing there, confused, a strange uneasiness crawling up my chest. I called out her name, but she didn't answer. She was asleep early, something she never did. The next morning, I found her sitting quietly on the balcony, holding a cup of tea. She looked peaceful, but distant. When I asked if something was wrong, she smiled and said, "Nothing at all." That was the beginning of a silence I didn't understand until it was too late. Looking back, I think that's when she started letting go, not out of anger, but out of quiet exhaustion. She had loved me in ways I didn't even notice. She had tried to talk to me without words, but I never learned her language until she stopped speaking it. And even then, I didn't change. I kept moving through life like everything was fine. It wasn't until she stopped calling me at lunch, stopped asking if I needed anything, stopped waiting by the door when I came home, that I finally felt something missing. But by then, the distance between us wasn't just emotional. It was something heavier, something you can't cross with an apology. There's a strange kind of blindness that comes with comfort. You start assuming the people you love will stay, no matter how little attention you give them. I was blind like that. I thought love was unbreakable, that her patience was endless. I didn't know that quiet hearts can still shatter, that even gentle souls get tired. I used to think that saying "I love you" once in a while was enough, but love isn't made of words. It's made of how you show up for someone, how you make them feel seen, even in the smallest ways. And I failed at that. One evening, I came home to find the house dark again. I called her name, but this time she wasn't there. There was just a note on the table, folded neatly, with my name written in her handwriting. Calm, careful, loving, as always. When I unfolded the note, my hands were shaking. Her handwriting, always so precise, so neat, looked smaller somehow, fragile in a way I had never noticed before. The words weren't long, but they carried everything she had felt, and everything I had ignored. She wrote, "I hope one day you understand how much I tried. I hope you notice the small things I've done, the love I've given you. I hope you remember me, not for the mistakes we both made, but for the quiet care I carried for you every day."
I sat there for a long time, staring at the words. My chest ached like I had swallowed something too heavy. I realized then, fully and painfully, that she had loved me in a way I could never repay. Every scolding, every sigh, every reminder I had rolled my eyes at, it was all love. And I had treated it like it was ordinary, like it would always be there. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I walked through the house like a ghost, tracing the outlines of her presence in every room. I could see her in the folds of the curtains she had straightened, in the chairs she had arranged perfectly, in the small things she had touched and left behind. Every little thing reminded me of her, and every little thing reminded me that I had been careless. I started replaying moments in my head, over and over again. The times I had been impatient when she asked me how my day was, the times I had shrugged off her advice about taking care of myself, the times I had dismissed her worries as unnecessary. All those moments, once insignificant, now felt monumental. They were pieces of love I had failed to acknowledge.
I began to talk to her, quietly, in the rooms where she used to be. I would say, "I see you now, Mom. I finally see you." It didn't bring her back. It didn't erase the mistakes. But it was the only thing I could do to keep her memory alive, to remind myself of the love I had ignored for too long. There was one evening when I found her old journal tucked in a drawer. She had always written little thoughts, notes about her day, reflections about life. Reading it now felt like stepping into her mind, seeing the world from her perspective. She had written about her worries for me, about her hopes that I would notice the love she carried silently, about her fear that I might only realize it once it was too late. And I had. I remember one rainy afternoon sitting by the window where she used to sit, flipping through her pictures and letters. The sound of the rain was soft, constant, comforting in a way, and I could almost imagine her sitting there beside me, humming that old tune. I cried like I hadn't cried in years, not out of anger, not even just sadness, but out of the overwhelming weight of love I had failed to appreciate. In the following weeks, I started noticing things I had never really seen before. The way she had arranged the plants in the garden, the way she had folded clothes, the small notes she had left in my drawers, the gentle reminders she had given about life, health, and happiness. All those small, quiet acts, that was her way of showing love, and I had ignored it. I began to see how much I had taken for granted, how many times I had assumed she would be there no matter what, how I had prioritized everything else, work, distractions, even pride, over acknowledging her presence, over valuing the love she had given me unconditionally. I started visiting her favorite spots alone, the little park she liked to walk in, the small cafe she enjoyed, even the corner store she went to when she wanted a quiet moment. It felt like walking through her world, trying to find the pieces of her that I had ignored. Every step was a reminder of what I had lost, of the moments I would never get back. One day, I found her old sweater she had started for me but never finished. It was half knit, the yarn soft and warm. I held it close and realized how much thought she had put into it, how much she had wanted to care for me in her own quiet way. And I had walked past it every day, oblivious. That's when it hit me fully. Love doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's in the quiet meals, the folded towels, the gentle smile at the door. And if you ignore it, if you wait too long, it can be gone before you even realize it's missing. The turning point wasn't dramatic in the way movies make it out to be. It wasn't a fight, a shouting match, or a betrayal in the traditional sense. It was subtle, slow, and crushing in its finality. She had been there, quietly giving, quietly loving, and I had been too busy to notice. And when I finally understood, she was gone. Not just out of the room, but gone from my life in a way that couldn't be undone. I started noticing my own reflection differently, the man I had been, the son I had failed to be. It wasn't about punishment or guilt alone. It was about the realization that time is fragile, that moments are fleeting, and that love requires presence, not just assumption. I began to talk to her letters aloud. I told her everything I had never said. Thank you. I'm sorry. I love you. I confessed my mistakes, my regrets, my missed chances. And even though she couldn't respond, I felt a strange sense of closeness, as if sharing those words with her memory helped me finally acknowledge her love properly. There were times I walked past her old chair, her favorite mug, her knitting needles, and the weight of absence hit me all over again. I would sit there silently, imagining the life she had lived, imagining the love she had given to a son who never fully noticed. And in those moments, the grief was insurmountable and yet strangely comforting, a reminder that what I had lost had been real, profound, and irreplaceable. I began to think about forgiveness, not hers, because she had never needed to forgive me. She had always been patient, gentle, and understanding, even when I was inattentive. The forgiveness I needed was my own, forgiving myself for the years I hadn't seen, hadn't appreciated, hadn't understood. I promised myself that I would carry her lessons forward, that I would honor her love by noticing the people in my life now. I would not repeat the mistakes I had made with her. Every call, every smile, every quiet moment of care, I would hold on to them, cherish them, and never assume they were permanent. The realization was slow, almost unbearable in its clarity. I had taken the purest love for granted, and by the time I understood it fully, she was gone forever.
After she passed, the house felt like a shell of itself. Every corner reminded me of her. The small scratches on the dining table where she had polished it too many times, the curtain she had folded just so, the faint scent of her favorite jasmine oil that lingered in the air. I would walk through the room slowly, touching things she had touched, trying to feel her presence. It was painful, but somehow it was the only way I could keep a connection to her. I started noticing the little things I had missed for so long, how she would leave notes in the kitchen reminding me to drink water or to eat something warm, how she always left the porch light on at night so I wouldn't have to stumble in the dark, how she would sit quietly in the living room, just listening to the sound of life, making sure everyone felt seen. I began to cry, not just because she was gone, but because I realized how many times I had overlooked her, how many times I had ignored her efforts, thinking they were ordinary, when in reality, they were extraordinary. I had taken for granted the steady rhythm of her love, assuming it would always be there, until one day, it wasn't. There were mornings when I'd wake up and expect to hear her humming in the kitchen. I'd walk in, and the silence would hit me harder than any words could. The house was clean, orderly, everything in its place, but without her, it felt lifeless. I would find myself speaking aloud, telling her about my day, about the little victories and failures, hoping she could somehow hear me. It was silly, I know, but it made the emptiness a little more bearable. I also began thinking about the times she had foregone her own comfort for me. The meals she skipped so I could have extra. The nights she stayed awake when I was sick. The sacrifices she made quietly, without ever asking for recognition. I hadn't realized the depth of her love until it was too late to show her gratitude. Her favorite chair in the living room became my place of reflection. I would sit there for hours, holding her half-finished sweater, flipping through old photos, and reading her letters over and over. Each note, each letter was a testament to her unwavering care. One in particular stood out. Love is patient, even when it is not seen. Love continues quietly, even when it is ignored. One day, you will understand this, and I hope you carry it forward. I finally understood, not in the way that brings joy or comfort, but in the way that comes with a deep, unshakable ache. Love is quiet. Love is consistent. Love is in the small gestures, the unseen efforts, the words whispered when no one is listening. And I had spent years blind to it. The sadness didn't disappear, but gradually I began to transform it into something else, a quiet determination. I promised myself that I would honor her memory by appreciating the love I still had in my life, by noticing the people who cared for me before it was too late, by never assuming that affection, care, or patience would last forever without acknowledgement. Sometimes in the evenings, I light a candle near her photograph. I talk to her, not asking for answers, not begging for forgiveness, but simply sharing my thoughts. I tell her I see her now, that I understand her love, and that I will carry it forward. The candle flickers softly, and I imagine her smile, quiet and warm, the same one that had watched over me for decades. I've also started noticing others differently. Friends, family, even strangers. I hold doors open longer,
listen more intently, remember birthdays, offer help without being asked. Small acts, yes, but they are my way of translating what I learned from her into the world. I try to see the invisible love that exists around me and to respond with the care it deserves. And so often, when the wind rustles the trees outside or the rain taps gently on the window, I think I hear her humming again, a memory, a presence, a reminder, a signal that while she is gone physically, the love she poured into me continues to live on in the house, in my heart, and in the way I choose to love others. Grief has become a teacher. It has taught me patience, awareness, and humility. It has shown me the fragility of life and the importance of noticing love while it is still here. I would give anything to have one more day, one more conversation, one more hug. But since I can't, I let her lessons guide me. I let her quiet, patient love shape the way I move through the world. And sometimes, late at night, I whisper into the dark, "I see you now, Mom. I understand. I love you." And in that moment, it feels like she's listening. It feels like her love, patient, quiet, unassuming, is still there, filling the spaces she left behind, reminding me that love, once truly understood, never really leaves. Time moves on, even when the heart is heavy. Life continued around me, but I carried her memory with me everywhere. I realized that grief doesn't disappear, but it changes. It becomes a quiet companion, a reminder of what was precious and what must never be taken for granted again. I began to take better care of myself, not just physically, but emotionally. I reached out to friends and family more, listened more attentively, and learned to appreciate the small gestures of love I used to overlook. Every smile, every thoughtful word, every simple act of care became a treasure I no longer assumed would always be there. Sometimes in the evenings, I sit by the window where she once sat, looking at the sky and letting memories wash over me. I think about her laughter, her quiet patience, the way she loved without asking anything in return. I talk to her in my mind, telling her about the day, the small victories, the challenges I face. It is not the same as having her here, but it brings me peace, knowing that the lessons she left behind continue to guide me.
I've come to understand that love is not always dramatic or loud. Sometimes it is in the quiet moments, the unnoticed sacrifices, the everyday acts of care that go unappreciated until it is too late. And it is in recognizing these small, quiet acts that we find the true depth of love, the kind that changes a life even when we are blind to it at the time. I still remember the last thing she said to me, her soft voice filled with that familiar warmth. "Take care of yourself." I wish I had understood it more deeply back then. Now I live with that advice, carrying her wisdom and love in my heart every day. I think about the people we love, the ones who are patient and present even when we don't notice them. I hope that by sharing this story, someone listening will remember to see them, to tell them they matter, and to never take their love for granted. Because one day, the quiet presence that shaped your life might be gone, and all that will remain are memories, letters, and the lessons they left behind. I try to live in a way that honors her, noticing the small things, expressing gratitude, cherishing moments before they slip away. And though the ache of her absence never fully fades, it reminds me to love more openly, to listen more carefully, and to never assume that love is ordinary. Even now, when the house is quiet and the world outside slows down, I feel her presence,
soft, steady, comforting. It is a reminder that while she may no longer be here in the way I wanted, her love continues, quietly shaping the way I move through the world. And for that, I am forever grateful. If you're listening to this story, I hope it touches your heart the way it changed mine. Love the people who are here with you today. Notice their care, appreciate their patience, and tell them you see them before it's too late. Because in the end, that is the most important thing we can do. Recognize the love around us, hold it close, and let it guide us to be better, kinder, and more present in every moment. And that's what I try to do now, every single day.